one of the interesting things about tournament time and what goes on, you know, often we project skullduggery or the planning and whether or not teams are only showing something and not everything, why they choose this player and don't choose this player at this time, how much they're going to expose their game plan. It's funny where we land in these things and what we decide is worthy and valid and plausible and what we don't even give consideration to. And one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is, why have the All Blacks seemingly changed their game plan post the Wallabies in Melbourne? The first three test matches of 2023 in Mendoza, in Auckland, and then in Melbourne, with three good victories, and there was a clarity. That's what stood out. If you know, I'm Johnny King, you know what my thinking has been. I haven't necessarily considered where we're heading to be the most fruitful path, and so I was pretty realistic as we arrived into 2023. However, there was the clarity that sort of hit me between the eyes at Mendoza, and I was like, wow, there was a simplicity, and that provided a clarity. And the simplicity, the clarity, all these things combined, and you got, this is actually looking good. And early on, of course, early season, but the initial part, teams are rising, teams will rise further, so there are all these other factors that come into it. But if I was to say anything, that Twickenham and St. Denis, and even Dunedin started making changes to the squad or the starting 15, and it was a different performance. But you put it down to the changes, and then we saw Twickenham, and there are factors there as well. It's funny how factors always come into it when things aren't maybe as they should be. And then St. Denis. So 3 test matches where it looks like something has changed. Something has been altered. And it's interesting to consider why. Now, some will say, well, you know, have the All Blacks, did they find out their game plan at that point and said, this works, this is how we're going to play, let's put it on ice? I don't know. Those type of scenarios where sides, you know, are playing a certain way intentionally to try and throw the opposition off their scent. I don't know if I find those very compelling. Well, maybe not to the point of it being somehow emphatic. Because how do you put those things into practice? Yeah, maybe you want to say, well, we're not going to do these things in our game. We're not going to provide these elements in our game. And maybe if you don't have the players, like I think I mentioned online, that who knew that Shannon Frizzell could be the most important player in this All Black side according to how they play. According to how they play. They don't seem to have another one, or they haven't chosen another one, who can replicate. Which I think is an issue. But that's another subject. That's another area, another issue from another area, and about selecting and choosing more than the implementation of that. And I guess we'll find out. Will we find out versus Italy? If Shannon Frizzell's back, maybe those worlds will collide and we'll see it. Because what we had there, the simplicity and the clarity, resonated. And people were like, wow, that's the All Blacks, they're back. And people started talking about them being favourites. Well, you haven't had that. Now, is it the opposition? Have they raised their game? And no doubt, I think that's part of it. However, the All Blacks haven't provided their own evidence that they're somehow still trying to follow through on how they're played. And so that leaves you thinking, what is going on here? And maybe it is about personnel. Maybe it is a combination of those factors. Maybe it is they just saying, okay, we know this works, but we don't want to necessarily provide a long-term copy of it. How much do sides hold back? Again, I'm I guess a little bit more skeptical about how much they hold back and how much they say they hold back. I think they probably say they hold back a lot more maybe than what they do. And it's more about the dynamic of what transpires. I mean, are forwards really that? Can they really like intentionally think that clearly and that cold killer like on the field? I mean, once the heat of battle arises, I'm being smart, of course, I'm being facetious. I'm sure they can. And maybe that's what's been talked about, the simplicity, and now we'll return to the complexity. So I'm not sure. Other things have been offered. I know someone close to me has offered something, and I read a reporter or a journalist actually said something along those lines. So maybe we'll do a video there as well. So other factors that could be the cause of what we're seeing, and just the Jekyll and Hyde type, the whoever you want to say is the first 3 test matches, and then the recent 3 test matches. You know, the Los Pumas, Springboks, and Wallabies, and then the other 3, Wallabies, Springboks, and Les Bleus. There's been such a contrast. It's hard. I mean, you think about it, it's hard to simply think that somehow that has happened by accident. There seems like there has to be a cause. Something has gone on, or something is going on. What that is, and this, again, this is not conspiracy theory stuff. So I'm not looking for like, there's this going on, but something has happened, because you don't just have that contrast happen by accident. Again, players, is there some intentionality about just wanting to rest and keep their powder dry? Or is it the opposition and the stage? What's going on there to provide that contrast? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and read your thoughts. What say you? I'm Johnny King.